Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Windham-Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. Today is Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. We're in the Windham High School auditorium, and the time is 6:30 on the nose. May I have a roll call, please?
Kate Bricks.
Here.
Jessica Bridges.
Here.
Jenny Butler.
Here.
Jody Carroll. Caitlin Downs. Pete Hensler. Char Jewell. Kate Levier. Christina Small.
Here.
Al Potter.
Thank you. Will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any adjustments to the agenda?
No, we don't. CJ, if you could just turn up Kate's mic just a little bit out here, would be great.
Okay. Woo! Before we get into public input, I have a few remarks. First of all, I just want to remind the public that on our website you can find all the challenged materials and the progress to date. If you go to the home page and you scroll down, there's a tab there, and there's 4 different tabs, one for district letter to the community, one that has IJJ, instructional and library material selection policy. There's a tab for book challenge progress, and there's also RSU 14 curriculum guides. So there's a wealth of information there if you want to continue to be informed about this process. As we move towards a possible appeal of books, I wanted to remind you all about voting procedures. Since 2009, when Raymond and Windham consolidated, it was determined by the state that Windham would have 6 board members and Raymond would have 3. A simple majority does not necessarily carry a vote. Windham board members have different voting powers than Raymond board members based on population. What this means, per MSR Title 20A, Section 1472 is, there shall be 1,000 votes in total among all members of this board. Again, the number of votes cast by each board member is based on population. Each Windham board member vote has a value of 130, and a Raymond board member vote has a value of 73. This is important to understand because it's possible that a majority of the board in bodies may not carry a motion based on weighted vote, based on the 73 and the 130. I can't remember ever having a vote where this had a bearing on any motion before us. There might have been one, but I think this is something that perhaps the public is not fully informed on. For example, 4 Windham votes, 4 Windham board member votes could carry a motion even though it's not the majority of bodies. If you want more information about this, you can go to specifically our policy, I believe it's BB, which specifies the votes per town, or give us a call. This is not typical how things run when you're looking for majorities, but this is very crucial information if we get down to any kind of vote. So again, welcome to the school board meeting. We're happy to have you all here. Some of this is redundant, but I'd like to review the guidelines for this evening's public comment. The purpose of public comment is to provide an opportunity to address the board. The board will listen carefully to all comments, but will not respond to the speaker. There should be no interaction between the speaker and the audience. Should that occur, the mic will be turned off until order is restored. The speaker will not forfeit their allotted time should they wish to continue to address the board. To be clear, this is an opportunity for the public to address the board and not the audience or any individual. Each person is granted an opportunity to address the board one time during public comment and is permitted 3 minutes in total to speak. Sharing a portion of the allotted 3 minutes with another speaker is not permitted. At the 3-minute mark, the timer will go off and your time at the podium will conclude. The audio will be turned off if the time limit is not adhered to. If you have not finished your comments during the allotted 3 minutes, you may send your complete statement to the board. Many people from the public have done that, and I respond to every single one. Additionally, if you do not wish to speak publicly, you may submit a written statement to the board for their review. And again, folks have done that. Requests for information or concerns that require further research will be noted and referred to the superintendent for further action if necessary. Speakers are expected to follow rules of common decency, etiquette, and decorum. Conversations amongst the audience should be moved out of the auditorium during public comment. They are distracting to the board and audience members and are not respectful to those who are speaking. I will stop the proceedings if necessary to allow people to move outside to the hallway if needed. Discussion of matters involving individual students are not permitted during public comment due to the privacy, confidentiality, and due process rights of any RSU 14 student. Also, discussion of personnel matters is not permitted during public comment due to the privacy, confidentiality, and due process rights of RSU 14 employees. For the purpose of this meeting, discussion of a personnel matter means any discussion of job performance or conduct of an RSU 14 employee, including complaints about them. As I look around this auditorium, I believe you are all here because you care about not just your children, not just your grandchildren, but perhaps your neighbors' or friends' children. But also because you care about children of RSU 14. We have had students speak during our public comment period who have not received the courtesy or respect from adults in the audience. Coming before the board to speak in this venue with this number of people being recorded and addressing a topic that is extremely controversial takes a vast amount of courage for any child, not to mention an adult. So I say this: if you care about children, you will not interrupt their statements. If you care about children, you will not make disparaging or harassing remarks during their statement. If you care about children, you will not banter loudly among yourselves during their statement. If you care about children, you will listen respectfully during their time at the podium. The adults in this room are expected to be role models during this meeting for all of our children. Please be mindful of that. Because I care about children, any student who comes to the podium will not be expected to share their last name if they are uncomfortable doing so. The requirement for adults to share their first and last name in the town they reside in will still remain. That will still be a requirement for all adults to speak before the board. There will be absolutely no exceptions. Thank you for honoring these guidelines. The board welcomes you to express your concerns and suggestions related to matters of the school district. Who would like to come before the board and speak?
Carrie Smalley from Wyndham. I'd like to start off with a moment of silence for those involved in Monday's Tennessee school shootings.
Thank you.
I'll start off by addressing a comment that was made during last week's meeting. A young woman came up and spoke and referenced the book and Netflix series, 13 Reasons Why, and turned to an audience member and said, quote, "You could be their 13th reason." This is inappropriate and manipulative, and you as a board are being put on notice that the mental health crisis that we are facing in this community goes much deeper than these explicit, sexual, suicidal, self-harming content could ever justify. Start placing counselors, therapists, support, aid, proper services with this budget instead of filling our libraries with material that depicts the sexual exploitation of minors, as it is clear that these students are crying for help. Instead of coddling these students and clapping, start supporting them by getting them the unbiased, professional, and psychological help that they need. Thank you.
Courtney Edwards, Wyndham. I want you to see something that proves how much I love you. This is only for you, Kaylee girl. He lifted his 7-year-old daughter and sat her down on the bedside beside him. Then he opened the snaps of his flannel pajamas. It stood up like stiff as stalagmite. See how much Daddy loves you? Show me how much you love me too. Touch it. He closed her hand around it. I know it sounded bad, but I wanted to touch it too. That was her sister watching. I didn't know what it meant, only that it made Daddy happy. I wanted to make Daddy happy too. That's right, his voice rocked in rhythm with his body. Oh yes, my Kaylee girl loves me, my little flower. When Daddy finished, he burrowed his face into Kaylee's hair and he wept, confused at his tears and at the sticky stuff icing her hands. Still Kaylee pleaded, "Don't cry, Daddy, what's the matter? Didn't I love you good enough?" Yes, you loved me good enough, so very good. But it's our little secret, okay? Kaylee aroused at his words, come into the moment secure in the aura of Daddy's love. She tried to sit up, but Daddy pushed her gently back down against the mattress. Stay just like that for Daddy. I want to teach you something new. He lifted her nightgown, rolled it up over her belly, and coaxed her thoroughbred legs apart. She squirmed at partly protesting. Don't move, Daddy's scarlet face underlined his commands. I thought he might smack her, but as quickly as his anger flared, it disappeared. Don't be afraid, this won't hurt. You'll like it, I promise. He kissed her length of her torso down to the small naked V. It was only his mouth that night. He didn't even ask her to touch him to prove how much she loved him. Afterwards, she worried. Didn't he want her love anymore? What had she done wrong? And yet he had taught her something new, something awful, worse, something wonderful, something every little girl should know to enjoy. Now, if this is identical, Adam read a segment of it during March 1st's meeting. Now, if anything is happening to anyone in this room or someone you know in this school or outside of this school, you take it to a police officer or a trusted adult. What you do not do is fill your libraries with this incest-sick shit.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. I hope you all are doing well. My name is Amelia Greslick. I'm a sophomore at Wyndham High School, and I hope to be a voice to those who are unable to speak about what is happening. I would like to thank our library staff and our teachers for constantly encouraging our exploration and learning using literature and providing resources for us to learn and supporting us through all we go through. I strongly believe that as teenagers we are exploring ourselves, we are exploring our bodies, we are exploring our sexuality, we are exploring our future career options, we are exploring the world, we are exploring what is right and what is wrong and everything in it so that we have some idea of how to be adults, and some of us only have little time left until adulthood. We are high schoolers. There's an expected maturity that comes with that. We are young adults. Some of us that go to Wyndham High School are legal adults. So why is it that we have lost all say in what we can and cannot consume in literature? Is it because these books are too mature? Because we talk about far more mature topics amongst peers. We hear far more mature topics every day. Has your child ever watched TV or seen the news or read the papers? There are definitely some mature topics in there. Because it's pornography? Because the majority of adults have far more access to far more forms of pornography. Not because it's LGBTQ+IA though, because that would be homophobic and transphobic. So why are you taking away these books? Because some people don't want their child to read it. To some people, this library is the only way that they can learn about the world through literature, and taking away someone's exploration for purely selfish adolescent ideologies about being the most important person in the room and the rest of the world revolving around you is not okay. You are taking away learning and exploration from other young adults is absolutely unacceptable. If you don't like it, don't read it. If you don't want your child to read it, don't let them read it. But it is not okay to control the way others live their life. Please leave them alone, and please be kinder towards others. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Day. I'm a resident of Wyndham. I have two questions. The first is directed to Mr. Howell. In the 2018-19 school year in the state of Maine, 44% of our state students did not meet the requirements for English or for reading. 67% of the students in the state of Maine did not meet the state's minimum level for math, and that was pre-COVID. Since then, we all know that test scores have gotten worse. They've gotten so bad that the teachers union in the state of Maine has worked with the Mills administration to make it even more difficult for parents to see the test scores. They're afraid that these scores will be used to hold teachers accountable. My question is, this month in an interview, the Maine Education Commissioner, Pender Macon, was quoted saying, "Academic learning is definitely going to take a backseat to social, emotional, gender, and race-based learning." Given that RSU 14 test scores in reading, math, and science have tanked over the last 3 years, do you agree with Ms. Macon's statement, and will traditional learning take a backseat here in RSU 14? My second question is directed at the members of the board. This week we saw the 4th mass school shooting involving a radicalized member of the LGBTQ+ community. Over the past few years, this school board has put an emphasis on social and emotional learning, specifically gender and sexual identity in schools. As board members, do you see a correlation between the focus on gender and sexualization of our children and the increased violence in our schools? On that same note, do you see a correlation between this emphasis and the increase in teen suicide? If the correlation cannot be made between these two items, would you concede that a correlation also cannot be proven, that the focus on social emotional learning helps students avoid detrimental negative social outcomes? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Frank Emery. I live in Raymond, but I'm one of the few that's fortunate enough to pay taxes both to Raymond and Wyndham, so I pretty much cover RSU. But it saddens me to realize that instead of instructional information in our library, that I'm paying for pornography, which I thought was illegal to teach and bring to children.
Maria Clark, Wyndham. I'd like to talk about the book challenges and the IJJ policy. So far, since January 24th of this year, I have put in 7 book challenges. Although I've not met with the librarian on all 7 of those books, 2 of them I'm going to discuss in a meeting with her tomorrow. The ones that I have had meetings on seem to be dragging. Only one, genderqueer, has come through a review committee. Nick and Charlie is now being discussed in a review committee. I met with the librarian on Monday, March 23rd, about a book I'm challenging, the same one that was read in the beginning of the meeting today. That book is identical. Still no committee, but Mr. Howell did send me an email tonight telling me that the copies of the books for the review committee have not come in yet. I want to know why this is happening. All of the citizens, the grandparents, and the parents who have made these challenges want to know. We want to know why this is taking such a long time. Let's talk about the review committee for a minute. Mr. Howell has to appoint a review committee to assess the book in question. It states in number 4 of IJJ that the committee members should remain neutral toward the viewpoint expressed in the materials. Yet, some of these committee members that you've chosen, Mr. Howell, have social media posts showing their bias in a number of ways, such as photos, posts favoring the very things that couldn't possibly have them remain neutral in any decision regarding the material in question. Lastly, the meetings with the librarian. They're fun. I did not like the fact that during my last meeting, the librarian told me that I was cherry-picking portions of the book I'm challenging. They also told me that they find it hard to have a conversation with people about the books who haven't read the books in their entirety. And we can't have educated conversations about the books if we don't read the books. Well, excuse me. Excuse me. Who's calling the kettle black here? Both the librarians that I met with have admitted that they had not read the books prior to the challenges. Well, I just want to remind you that no district policy, no district employee has the right to define my method of forming an opinion. I don't need to prove the burden of proof to show my concern about vulgarity and obscenity when it comes to wanting to protect my grandkids. Policy IJJ is riddled with holes. Superintendent has made many points.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Kristen Day, Wyndham. The way this administration is handled, the community concern about library content and book challenges is terrible. All connection to decency, ethics, sanity, and reality have been checked at the door. So anyone who will die on the hill of making all pornographic and depraved content available in school libraries for ages 11 up will be happy to know that this district has your back. You're reviewing IJJ because it's admittedly inadequate, yet we're still being led through hoop after hoop to follow it, except when it suits administration, which turned step 1, a discussion with the librarian, into a district-wide staff meeting. Then the review committee, which is supposed to be generally neutral but wasn't, is expected to form an opinion based on the whole book, not cherry-picking passages or images showing pussy eating, underage drinking, porn culture, sex with animals, or other depraved content that, of course, we are guaranteed the kids would never cherry-pick. There's more, but the whole thing is a total and utter shit show. And we have been strung along, lied to, lied about, and all for what? So that certain adults can get the most depraved materials in front of the youngest kids possible? The people running things and those who back them up without discernment have lost their minds. The false flag that this is book banning or hateful or are being pushed to distract from the school's departure from what used to be common sense decency, protecting the innocence of children, promoting their self-empowerment, not their safety within some label or social group membership. The review committee's decision letter on genderqueer was honestly a giant middle finger. Not because they kept the material, but because it is purposefully generic and relies solely on the perceived value of diversity and inclusion to some children's success. It does not acknowledge or respond to the concern, obscene materials in our school libraries. It is therefore an incomplete and an inadequate review, and a non-starter for the book review process to be in any way productive moving forward. One justification given was regarding accessibility. It actually said that kids with difficulty reading can gain from looking at the pictures in this book. How is that considering the book as a whole, which we've been told we have to do? Then the policy asks for passages and page numbers. So I wrote a 16-page book challenge, including images, text, and read the book in full and qualified the social benefits of the book that it had for me as an adult. My review was examined, it said, yet not one of my concerns was even acknowledged. Evidence required for me, but not for thee. Yeah, this review committee was a full kangaroo court. I will appeal with the same attention I gave to my complaint and hope that this board gives it just treatment where the committee did not.
Anybody else wish to speak?
Danny Davis, Wyndham, Maine. Integrity, what is it? It's the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles or ethics. Having integrity means doing the right thing in a reliable way. It is a personality trait that we admire, since it means a person having a moral compass that doesn't waver. It literally means having wholeness of character. In 2016, a high school principal recommended a football player for a prestigious athletic award weeks after learning the student had been accused in 2 cases of child gross sexual assault, one under 8 and one under 4 years of age. Police notified school administrators of the charges. About 5 weeks later, that student was recommended for the award by the principal, along with the coach. The award is presented to linemen who are considered positive role models and display integrity, honesty, and athletic citizenship. The principal said he was aware of the charges when he wrote the letter of recommendation for the student to receive the award. When questioned, he said, "It's up to the court system to decide if the student is guilty." The student received the award and the $1,000. Not all members on the award committee were told about the charges. One member said, "We should have known. We should have been made aware, and I'm very upset." In the courtroom, the mother of the 2 children said, "When my daughter has a hard time sleeping and she has anxiety, that's your fault. As a parent, one of your worst nightmares is someone harming your child. Our lives are forever changed." Could you imagine the anger and helplessness the parents felt when the system was played to have the player receive an award for being an exemplary citizen? The high school was Wyndham, and the principal was our current superintendent. What is your justification for this? I know you won't answer, but we all want to know. So now we know the award committee, he withheld information about a convicted rapist, which resulted in the assailant getting a scholarship.
I think we're going down a road
It's clear
that's
when
not
you look.
appropriate.
It's clear when you look at who he
We're talking
appointed to this
personnel
current
now.
committee that he appointed
I'm
a
sorry.
biased committee. The policy
CJ.
states the committee.
Thank you. We're going to take a recess. Okay. Who else?
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Ashlyn Cuthbert, and I am an 8th grader at Wyndham Middle School. There have been several comments from community members that they are not trying to target or hurt students. In fact, there have been many comments stating that they are trying to protect these students. To show you that this is not what's happening, here is a reading from a text message that I received after last week's meeting. Quote, "I am done with the stuff and the fact that they are targeting kids with autism. I have autism and now I feel embarrassed. I am done with this and I'm not going again. I will keep supporting you," and blank the name of another student, "but I am just scared to go. Thank you for being one of the people that I trust." End quote. Shortly after I received this message, I called this person to follow up, and they stated that they were not only afraid for their family members based on comments made by community members, but as well as for their own safety at school the next day. This 7th grade student is, and I quote, scared to death. This is the real impact on the students the community is trying to protect. Students are being attacked because of a book that is optional to read, and in the process, feel physically threatened. If community members want to do what's best for all students, I suggest not being belligerent toward them and the people that they look up to. There are policies in place so that parents or guardians can restrict their own child from reading a book. By all means, please feel free to go through these channels. However, standing up here attacking books, students, teachers, librarians, principals, superintendents, and school board members is absolutely not the answer. I have gone to the last 4 school board meetings, including this one, and have spoken each time. What I have testified is not just my own personal opinion, but is the opinion of many students who are too afraid to speak. And if I don't stand up for them, who is? I am honored to be that person for these students. However, I am both saddened and disappointed by our community for being the reason that they are fearful. Members of the board, I hope that the main group of people you are listening to are your students, because in the end, those are the people your decision is affecting. Not parents, not community members, but students. Thank you
very much.
10 o'clock window. We have said over and over again, we are not against gay people, homosexuality, anything along those lines. What we are against is sexuality, a sexually explicit manner being distributed to minors. You folks are children. We all were at one time. This material, like Camel advertised cigarettes with a cartoon character, and vaping companies have bubblegum flavor to get kids addicted. Porn is addictive, and these images are harmful to students. And it's probably hard to hear it, but you've got to talk and listen to the experts who know more about this field than a librarian by far. The educators are not educated on this subject. It is clear, so clear. If you do have information that supports porn for kids, please show us. I haven't seen it. I asked the school board to do that, and you refused to answer my question. I got them right here. Did not answer 5 questions, which I'm going to get to. I always get off track on my speech a little bit because I just got to have you folks understand that it's not healthy to have porn. You say we're against gay people. I met 2 very special people the last couple of weeks, David Arthur and Ivy, okay? David went through a complete transgender transition, came back again. In this book, if you read it, it's heartful, scary at times, but it gives what this path can lead you down, and I just want to read an excerpt from it. You can be same-sex attracted and not be part of the transgender movement. You can be in a loving, pure, intimate, romantic relationship complementary with someone of the same sex, but not be a part of the LGBT movement. This movement has pridefully and shamefully bamboozled millions of people to believe otherwise. Many are guilty into partaking of this movement that have a sad place to be. Being same-sex attracted is not a cause, nor is it something that needs to be marched for or privately embarked on like some after-school program. The LGBT movement is a deceptive, dangerous, and turning truth that the same-sex individuals exist into some type of charade or in front of a much darker movement coming very soon, the pedophile movement. Those whole transgenderism nonsense is targeting, preying and devouring our youth, trying to make the rights of children above their own parents. If your 8-year-old child can take puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and choose their own gender without the consent or knowledge of a parent or by a counselor that is not educated in the field by any means, or they will soon be able to choose their own sex partner regardless of that person's age. Yes, that's what's coming, and it is coming quicker than you think. It's here. You literally had that poster I've held up a bunch of times that my child can go talk to a counselor, has no education on sexual transitioning, whatever
Thank you,
else you want
sir.
to call it.
Your time is
I'm going to read
concluded.
questions that I...
I'm
no.
sorry.
Listen, you say you answer
I'm sorry.
questions.
CJ, would you shut down the mic, please? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. If we are to proceed with this, I respectfully request that there is decorum and etiquette maintained. This is not the time for cross conversations, excuse me, or debates. If this continues, I will terminate public comment. CJ.
Hello. Hi. My name is Julie Clifford, and I'm a resident of Wyndham. Based on what you just said, I'm going to skip some of what I wrote, and I'm going to get to what's really most important to me. My great-grandparents are the founders of a private school in Portland. My great-grandmother was 101 years old when she passed away, and she was full of wisdom. When asked what the essence of her school was, she didn't hesitate, and with her one-word response, she affirmed love. That's what it begins with. Everything else grows from there. I have rode the middle of the line of this topic for weeks. But like my great-grandmother, I will always choose love. To the board, I have previously asked that you remove the books in question. But after much reflection and wrestling with my own heart, I would ask that you consider the entire student body. The whole body, not just one extremity, but all of the students. Thank you.
Evening, Louis Willett, Wyndham, parent of first grader, and on a lighter note, trying to end this debate one way or the other. The students from the elementary schools and up through the middle school, I don't know if the high school has a team, participated in the Odyssey of the Mind tournament at Noble High School down in North Berwick. Now, being one of the coaches for primary team, as far as what I saw with the dinosaur presentations that our kindergarten, first, and second graders presented, they had a blast. And literally, there is nothing more that was at the tournament other than the kids enjoying presenting what they have put time, effort, and energy into producing to display their talents. So I encourage all here to keep that in mind when you're attacking or debating these topics, that we're all here because we all feel a strong sense of support for our students and for the staff. And they are tasked with the immeasurably hard job of preparing these students upon graduation, entering a world where there are varied opinions, there are different viewpoints. And that's one thing I instilled in my team, was always look at a problem from a different perspective. Thank you.
I'm sorry. We're not allowing people sitting on the stage. Thank you. Oh, I didn't notice. Sorry. I didn't notice you up there. I'm sorry. You were sitting on the stairs. Yes. No. Public comment has concluded. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the superintendent's report. Sure, if you want to put them right down there. Put them right there. Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, just so you know, here's Nick and Charlie. I'm done. You guys can definitely stop trying to charge my kid for that book. It's trash and it doesn't
CJ.
be in here.
CJ.
Jenny.
We're going to take a beat here, and we're going to move into superintendent's report.
Sure, so actually I'm going to share something that I had not planned on sharing for tonight, but I think it's important for the community to hear. And it's actually something that was written February 20th, 2016. Over the past few days, we've been criticized harshly by some in the media for providing recommendations for a Windham High School student who's been charged with crimes involving sexual misconduct. In an effort to help bring this matter to closure, we're writing now to provide a perspective on these events. As educators, we have certain obligations to all of our students. We must do everything in our power to keep them safe and help them thrive. We must judge them based upon what we know about them, not rumors and accusations by others. And we must respect their rights and treat them fairly. This is what we attempted to do in this case. When we were informed that a student was being investigated for inappropriate conduct with individuals outside of our school, we immediately established a safety plan to ensure that if these accusations were true, all of our students would be safe. We had limited information about the allegations and did not jump to any conclusions as to the student's guilt or innocence. Instead, we respected his fundamental right to the presumption of innocence. We trust in our legal system to make that determination. When we were asked to provide letters of recommendation for this student, we accurately related the first-hand information we know about the student who, while at Windham High School, had been a model student, diligent, hardworking, and respected by...
Good job. Nice bullshit.
And respected by peers and school staff alike. We've been asked whether, knowing the media firestorm that resulted, we would have done things differently if we had to do it over again. In a recent column, Portland Press Herald writer Bill Nimitz suggests that it was our actions that drew attention to this matter, thereby making it more traumatic to the students involved. If that is true, then yes, we would have done things differently. Our number one priority is and always will be to act in the best interest of each and every student at Windham High School. And that was signed by myself, Rich Drummond, and Matt Perkins. I just also want to mention that in situations such as that, there's often much which can't be shared publicly, information that we're aware of having to do with the entire situation that we can't share. And I understand that it was brought up tonight. It was reviewed by the board in 2016. It was reviewed by the board in 2023. And really just thought people would be aware. If you want to go to the Press Herald, search the archives for February of 2022, you can find it there. Also want to mention, and one of our people coming up to public comment had mentioned about our Odyssey of the Mind teams. So I'm elated to report that 8 Odyssey of the Mind teams had tremendous success at the state tournament this past Saturday at Noble High School. All teams represented their school and district with great preparedness, integrity, and sportsmanship. One of our Division I teams finished first in their competition. This qualifies the team for OM World Finals at Michigan State University on May 24th to 27th, 2023. Team has met... The team has met already and proceeding with making plans to fundraise and figure out logistics of traveling to Michigan with the 7 students, Coach Rebecca Mill, and family supporters. So just a huge word of congratulations for our Odyssey of the Mind teams and the work that they did in order to do that. The last thing I want to end with tonight is I want to say a huge thank you to Principal Drew Patton, who is principal of Wyndham Middle School. Drew sent a letter to his staff this afternoon letting him know that at the end of this year that he will not be continuing at Wyndham Middle School. And that he will be pursuing other options. I just want to say a big thank you to Drew. Over the 8 years that I've known and worked with him, he has worked extremely hard to meet the needs of his students, and also I really appreciate the countless hours that he's put into planning and programming for the new middle school, which has just poured his heart and soul in that, and has just done so much to support kids. And so we will then be starting a process for board members. We'll be looking to advertise right before April vacation, and then we'll be putting together a committee to go ahead and replace Drew. But again, big thank you to Drew and the work that he's done for RSU 14.
Time for board roundtable. Who would like to speak?
Thank you. Thanks. Leave it to Al to save the day. School boards across Maine are bound by federal and state laws and regulations. Most of the time, we are bound to these laws and regulations when conducting business of the RSU. There has been some concern regarding the statement I made during board roundtable on March 15th. My comments and intent have been misconstrued. In no way did I reference any materials that are before the board or may be before the board in the future. We have a set process along with laws and regulations we must follow. The review of any challenge materials will be thoroughly vetted against RSU, state, and federal laws, regulations, and policies. In my professional life, I regularly conduct investigations working with others in that investigative process to determine the facts, evaluate those facts against pertinent laws, regulations, and policies. I do this without regard to any personal opinion I may have about the situation. To be clear, I have not taken a premature position on any materials that may come before the board. We, as a board, have learned a lot over the last couple months. We've learned what works and what needs revision. We are actively working on those items. With that being said, we are still bound by federal and state laws and regulations. As I've stated in the past, if a member of the public is not happy with the laws and regulations school districts in Maine must operate under, they need to reach out to their state and federal legislators to lobby for change. Thank you.
As a community, we are discussing books, their content, their appropriateness, how we select them for our collection, how and if we should remove them from our collection. We're discussing all of these things, but what is not up for discussion is the rights of trans students. The right to exist, the right to self-identify, the right to be treated with the same respect we would treat any other student, the right to be called their chosen name and pronouns, and their legal right to use the bathroom of their identity that was upheld by the Maine Supreme Court. This is not up for discussion here. Let's continue this discussion about books, not people.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to move into committee reports. I'll just go down the list. Finance, facilities. Did we? Okay. Policy, we have met, and we are planning our review for IJJ. We took a look at procedures, proposed procedures. We're not going to rush this process. It's too important. I think we recognize that there needs some improvement in the policy. For those of you in the audience or those who are listening in, should you have any recommendations for changes, things for us to consider, please email us. We would really like to hear from you. As we know, experience is the best teacher, and now that we're knee-deep in this policy, we realize that there's some tweaking that needs to be done, and processes need to be clarified, and we recognize that. So it's a work in progress. Next steps will be staff and librarians and the A-team will be reviewing some documents, and we're going to get their feedback. But we're going to be careful. We're going to take our time to get it right as we can, based on our experience. So stay tuned for more information. Curriculum, anything?
We have not met. I think we meet next Monday.
And technology?
No.
Nothing. Adult ed? Nothing. Vocational? Nothing. Been waiting all night.
I just got a quick, some quick exciting news. So the Wyndham High School Quiz Bowl team competed in the state championships last Saturday at Bates. And the exciting news is we won first place. We're state champions, which is awesome. Great news. Big shout out to Mr. Ziegler and Ms. Densmore. They are absolutely amazing. And thank you to Ms. Reynolds for driving us there. That's all I got.
Amazing accomplishment. Amazing. We're going to get into really the most important part of the evening, and that is to discuss the budget. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Howell.
Sure. So board members, within your packets, you have two different sheets. One actually has where we are currently with version 6, with some attachments behind that, and the other is just kind of a quick summary of the budget process that I want to kind of walk through and just remind everyone of where we are in this and where we've been working through this. So first of all, budgets get approved in June. We start working on budgets in late October, early November. So really we're already into the next school year when our budget development process works. Through the months of November and December, Christine and I and Christine and Lisa meet with each of the building principals, we meet with each of the departments, and we start looking at what are the overall needs and start developing what some of the themes are, where some of the shortcomings, and we go line by line by line with each of those cost center directors. During the month of January, we work through budget development, and we've always prioritized enrollment numbers, school safety, and then secondary to that, we look at where are some program holes or where are some supports that we need to put into place. That's happening throughout the month of January. February, we're still working through budget development. 1st of February this year, we were able to give a little sneak peek to the board where we were in the budget process. And then back on March 1st, that was my opportunity to share with the board budget presentation. I would be remiss if I didn't mention from that late October to March 1st, the amount of work that Stacy Webster is doing behind the scenes, making changes, making sure that everything is up to date, making sure that we're properly budgeting for all the individual lines and all the different changes, and as things, and as principals are meeting with her, just a huge thank you to Stacy for the work that she does to support all of us in that budget development process. I know she's probably watching tonight, trying to see what the questions are. And then over the past few weeks, you've had the opportunity to hear from all the different cost centers, and tonight is a chance for the board to do some deliberation. Typically in the past, we've given 2 dates in April for board voting on the budget, and depending upon where you feel you are tonight, whether or not you want to vote on the 13th or whether or not you want to vote on April 5th. May 17th, mark your calendars, public budget meeting here in the Windham High School auditorium. Bill Stockmeyer will be moderating again this year. And then, actually I think I've got the wrong date here. I think it's June 13th is the budget referendum this year, in which the voters in both Windham and Raymond will have the chance to ultimately approve the budget. Just turning the page and just a reminder, board, what is in this budget. So first of all, at Windham High School, we have an Eagle Block teacher that is somebody working with students on credit recovery, course recovery, half of a Spanish teacher, and that's just to help. We've had an itinerant teacher who's been going back and forth between Jordan Small and Windham High School. Our Spanish teachers are teaching multiple sections and doing a fantastic job, and we need to up a little bit as far as the number of personnel that's there. At Raymond Elementary School, there's a reduction of a classroom teacher due to enrollment. Jordan Small Middle School is a grade 6 teacher due to enrollment, a larger class going over. Primary schools, reduction of a classroom teacher. For technology, with the state and the MLTI program, they are currently subsidizing 1 grade level of computers each year. So basically the state's paying 66%, so that's 1 grade level of computers. In the transportation department, a bus aide and half of a van driver. And then under lease and support services, 1 multi-language learner teacher. Numbers for us, for our students, have just increased dramatically over the past few years. 0.4 of a social worker. In addition, we've had a district-wide site coordinator, and we are reallocating the funds from that to basically, it's a wash to an assistant director's position, a school psychologist, and then also I've shared with the board the day 1 teacher is that day 1 is starting a regional program in Windham. Because that program will be in Windham, we will have students who will be coming from other parts of the state of Maine, but they will officially become Windham residents. They'll be RSU 14 students, and this will actually be a teacher who teaches on site at the day 1 program, but will be under the umbrella of RSU 14. Under district-wide, this includes some additional slots for pre-K. This includes an elementary SRO, someone to work and coordinate across all the elementary schools. And then also, this budget includes the decrease of the school nutrition transfer, which typically the board has had a sizable amount on the budget, but due to lunches being free, revenue is up so that we feel confident that we can reduce that from the budget. Just some of our challenges of where we're at, and then I'll get to us in just kind of some of the budget process we've been through. Our open the door this year was 4.18%, and that's assuming that you roll over every single position, every single person, negotiated contracts, and then looking at other increases for health insurance. So some of our challenges this year, definitely negotiated contracts, health insurance salaries. Within the state funding formula, increasing valuations for Windham and Raymond. They're both great places to live that offer great services for students, which also means that home values are up, and that ultimately will impact how much state subsidy you have. We've seen some reductions in economically disadvantaged. Like everybody else that's out there, inflation of goods for purchased services, food costs have gone up, supplies have gone up, cases of paper have gone up, so inflation of those. Our energy costs, electricity is going from 6 cents to 11 cents for us, which I actually think is still better than what we're paying at home. And our motor fuels have gone up. And just to remind everyone, you've heard me say this a million times, we drive the equivalent of from here to Dallas every single day in miles. So buses and vans are out on the road. We know we also see some health insurance increases, which I'll talk about here in a second. In addition, a surprise that we had in the midst of budget is that the state has changed what our requirement is for paying towards main purse, which was a $156,000 expense that we had not initially budgeted for and prepared for. So those are some of our challenges. Now let me just go to, because it's always good to go to some good news. We were notified yesterday afternoon that initially within the state formula for how subsidy is calculated, that there had been an error in the formula. And initially we thought we would be losing, because some of our pre-K numbers have been reduced, we'd be losing about $65,000 in subsidy. We're actually up $673,000 in subsidy, which is a huge swing from what we expected. Just also remember to remind the board and remind the public is that when we go through the budget process, we spend a lot of time on the expense side. We don't spend a lot of time on the revenue side, but to be able to add the equivalent of 1% and 1/3 in additional subsidy has a huge impact on what we're going to be asking for a tax impact to the citizens of Windham and Raymond. So just to kind of walk through where we are now, going through our process, and board members, this is the second page walking through version 5 and version 6. So through version 5, we reduced the school nutrition transfer, which was $100,000. We paid off some leases so that future debt that we wouldn't be carrying in the budget, that was $180,000. Initially, in version 4, we had a second grade teacher at Raymond Elementary, which we've now reduced, so that was an additional $75,000. So initially, you started with version 4. Version 5, we reduced by $346,000. In version 6, which is the percentage that you have in front of you, that surprise of $156,000 for main purse, an increase. We received our health insurance max rate. I don't know if that was Monday or Tuesday this week, but reduced our budget by about $400,000 for what we had anticipated. Slight reduction property and liability as those particular policies have come in. Miscellaneous staff changes. We have reduced based on some projected turnover savings with staff that are going to be retiring. And then in addition, we are not going to be able to do all the pre-K partnerships that initially we had budgeted for. So that's a reduction of over $200,000. And so working down through version 6 is we've reduced $649,000 from the initial budget that you saw, which puts us, let me just walk us through. So initial open the door was 4.18%. Version 2 was 8.09%. Version 3 was a 7.7% increase. Version 4 was a 6.6%. Version 5 was a 5.9%, and version 6, which you have in front of you, is a 4.7% increase. In talking to my peers across Cumberland County, RSU 14 actually has the lowest percentage increase projected at this point in the budget process for next year. And the range goes from 4.78% in RSU 14 to 11 and 12% to some of our neighbors to our south and to our southeast. So quite a range there, with most actually falling in the 7.5% for increases looking across. So right now, with where we are at 4.78%. This includes all of the increases that we're projecting for supplies, energy costs, electricity, motor fuels, salary increases, and that's where we're at the moment.
Anyone have any thoughts? Yep.
So one question under version 6, Chris, workers' comp equipment for $5,000, what is that?
Sure. So we've been working with MEMIC for station analysis and teaching analysis as far as spaces, and we're finding that our ergonomics are awful.
Yep.
And so working across classrooms and offices to be able to invest a little bit more money in that, because it's reducing our comp claims for repetitive injuries.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. In a few of the presentations that have occurred over the last month, some of the presenters mentioned that there was either positions or expenses that were under ESSER that they wanted to continue, and some of them were related to like counseling and support and all of that, which, I mean, if anybody's been paying attention for more than 2 seconds knows that we definitely need those things. But I'm curious to how much of what was created under ESSER is still being asked for to be fully budgeted by taxpayers at this time?
Sure. So if you go back to the significant budget page sheet, that Eagle Block teacher,
Yep.
the grade 4 teacher for 1 year at Manchester School, and social work support at Jordan Small and Raymond Elementary.
Okay.
Those are the 3 elements that are still that were in ESSER. Manchester numbers are continuing to go up. Manchester's going to be the largest they've been in a few years. And then I think Ryan had a chance to share about the Eagle Block teacher.
My last thing is, when we went through this process last year, I know that it caught everybody surprised that I voted against the budget. And I had requested that we get a budget versus spend to date number, and I noticed in our books that it the amount spent per cost center was there for the prior year, but I was looking for current year. Is there any way to do that?
There is a way to do it. When we initially ran the numbers from the budget book, and when we were at that point in the year, it didn't tell a complete story because of where spending falls in the year. I can definitely provide an updated piece to that. It'd probably be easier at this point to do it electronically versus a hard copy.
Yep.
But yes, that's something we can do. When we ran it in the initial numbers, and again, we were running those in January, February, and it just did not give the full picture, whereas previous year spending gave an idea of where those things fell.
Yep, understand. Thank you.
Hi there. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about the main PERS increase and the pre-K partnership change?
I would have to get back to you with the exact percentage, but the percentage that the district is required by law to contribute towards main PERS for teacher retirement and anyone else under main PERS went up. So the formulaic piece went up, and so it's assigned back to districts to do that. For pre-K partnerships, Christine, I don't know if you want to take this.
Sure. We've been working through many different details regarding Chapter 124 and our potential partners. They need to show that they can meet all of the requirements outlined in Chapter 124, which guides your early childhood programming. And so we are getting close to having 3 additional potential partners and working through that process, and I'll get you an update within the next couple of weeks. Did that answer? Yep.
All right. Chris, as you mentioned earlier, we spend a lot of time focusing on the expense side of things and not so much on the revenue side, but it's refreshing to hear that there's going to be an additional $673,000 in terms of revenue. So what would be helpful, and what we've seen in the past, is starting to take a look at what the impact is on the tax rate, like the scenarios for a $250,000 home in these towns. When can we expect to see information like that so we can see like a historical comparison?
Sure. So the impact on a $250,000 home on Wyndham is $126. For a $250,000 home in Raymond, it's $105. I can share that community assessment page, and the reason behind the differences is just because based on valuation and mill rate that's assigned through the state formula based on being a minimal receiver in Raymond and where Wyndham's at. But it's currently it's at 126, and then it would be 105.
All right, no, I appreciate those numbers, and then maybe you can follow up either next meeting or through an email just with kind of the how that compares to the historical years.
Yeah, and actually probably can get that off first thing in the morning to board members.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments about the budget? What would be cut? I'm not suggesting it, but this seems to be, with the increases in energy and all of the things that you outlined, if we were to consider going below the 4, where are we, 7, 8? Is that right? Are we talking increase in class sizes? Are we talking, I mean, we've all sat through the budget meetings and had very few questions because it seemed pretty, I don't want to say bare bones, but extremely reasonable. And I, for one, don't want to consider reduction in staff. So would that be the next step if this board were to decide we wanted to see a 4 or 5? Or do you know where I'm going?
I do. So roughly in our budget, every percent is $560,000. And so, half a percent, let's call it 260,000. We would be looking at things such as the Eagle Block teacher not increasing Spanish this year. We would have to come back together as an A-team to look at all the support services pieces. There are just some things here with student supports and needs. Given where we are as a district, I can't see moving that. Ultimately, we would also then take a look at unfilled positions, which most likely would impact class size, that we would have to increase some of those items.
And to be clear about the process, the board does not designate specifically what areas to reduce. We might give you a dollar amount or percentage, but the process is you meet again with the A-team, and collectively as a group, you talk it through and discuss the needs of the district as a whole. Is that accurate?
That's very, very accurate. I mean, we're going to meet together. We would be meeting together as a group and looking at trying to keep sizes reasonable across and look at everyone's building, everyone's grade level to see where we're at. I think what the A-team presented to you as a board is what they identified as here are the real needs at the moment, and here's where enrollment-wise, maintaining reasonable class sizes across the district.
Yep.
So again, that goes back to what we were just talking about with the revenue portion of it, because if you think about it, the expenses that are being presented right here are the expenses that you had yesterday morning before you got the news. And so if 1% decrease to expenses is $560,000, we just received $673,000 that we weren't expecting. So that's effectively reducing the expense. I mean, the difference that the taxpayers has to fund is essentially net positive in that situation. So I think we have to do a good job of that when we're presenting the budget, when we're each time in every meeting, at the public meeting. I mean, because it's important to understand those differences.
One more question. how many positions that are in this current proposed budget are unfilled at this time? And how many do you think we're actually going to be able to fill?
Just as far as what we need to hire, let me just look down through. The half Spanish teacher is something that's currently we would need to hire for. It's not a current position. Grade 6 teacher at Jordan Small we would need to hire for. There's nobody that's in that position. And then Manchester grades 4, 5. I would need to get back to you on open positions that are in the district. I want to say, Lisa, you're here, 5 or 6 We have a couple ed tech positions that currently aren't filled, and I know we have a special education position that's not filled but is advertised because it's a definite need.
I can ask something in the meantime to fill a little space for you, Ms. Garno. I think it's also important going through the process the first time. When we originally met in February and you gave us a preview for the budget, that was the first time I had gone through that process on the board. And one of the things that you had explained to us, I think is important just to mention, not just for the public, but I'll just say I appreciated, was that the administration and the team had already come together as a team to decide which things they were going to get in each school based on what their peer, the other, administrator needed more than maybe they did. So I want this in my school, but I know this is really needed for the district. And I got thinking about that after the meeting, and I've thought about it multiple times. That's really such an important step that maybe we haven't talked about, is that our administrators worked collectively to decide what they absolutely bare minimum needed, and in some cases didn't ask for something that they could really use in their school because there was a need in another part of the district that was more important as a collective. And I think that's important to say out loud, because what we've condensed down to here at 4.7 being the lowest in our entire region in the state, given the climate right now, I think is really impressive. And I'm really impressed with the process that we've gone through this year. So I just want to say thank you for working hard, because that's a good number.
Oh, I don't know if it works. Just yell it.
Just yell.
Okay, so these are current positions, Char, that are open in the district. So the first one is the Misty Gilhaney's position, the district psych coordinator that was transferring over to the assistant psych coordinator. She chose another position, so that position is currently open. We have a psych coordinator position at the high school, which is a quasi-administrator, so that position is open. I currently have with open positions and the people that are either retiring or resigning at the end of the year, 4 special education teachers district-wide. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ed tech positions that I know that are either open or will be at the end of the year with people who are leaving. And then I also have a school psychologist position currently.
Thank you.
What other information would any of you need to make a decision?
I just would like to know when we might know about the health insurance part, because it's penciled in at 6%.
Yeah, so we have been, the way that the state runs it is they look at overall percentage of policy, and I don't want to say state, it's actually Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, that does it. They look at percentage of policy, and they put you into bands based on usage. We've been provided the worst band possible is 6% for an increase. Just my knowledge on where we've fallen in the past, I'm going to guess. I don't want to guess. I don't want to put it out there because maybe I'll do that privately. But we won't know until April 7th. So we've got a little bit of time with that. just looking at numbers and the drop, I don't think it's going to make a significant amount of a change given where we are and how much it dropped, because we had budgeted 12%. That was in that 597. We dropped it to 6. I'm only going to guess it's probably going to drop a percentage.
All right, Kate mentioned it earlier, and we've gone through this exercise in the past, and I do think it's helpful, and I'm sorry it's more work for you and the A team, but we have in the past received scenarios, different levels of cuts. If we were to cut such and such, if we wanted to bring this down by 500,000, these are the things that we would be eliminating. And it is helpful because we talk about things in dollars and stuff, but once you start seeing the actual impact of these kind of cuts, it can help make the decision a little more clear. So if you could maybe provide that for us, that would be great.
Yep, we can do that. You're probably looking at, it would be 6 teaching positions.
So yeah, maybe, like a 0.5%, 1% and 1.5%, or I don't know if there's other board members that have different figures in mind, but just as a starting point.
So is that the direction of the board for our next meeting to discuss that, the scenarios? Okay. Okay. You understand what we want. Very good. Okay, so our next meeting next week, we will reconvene again and discuss the budget, which will be important. And then the following week, I don't have the calendar in front of you, we will vote, hopefully. Okay. Item 10, report of the secretary.
I move to approve the minutes of the March 22nd, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. And may I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Good night. Thank you very much.